thanks so much for being here. My name is Kat and I make houseplant videos here on Good and Planty. If you just so happen to absolutely love this video, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, or following me on Instagram. All of these things help me grow my channel like a plant. I hate to say it, but winter is literally right around the corner, at least for me in Philly. This fall slash winter is definitely gonna be a challenge for me because I am in a new home full of new and different seasonal quirks. So today I wanted to make a video to show all of you some of the adjustments that I'm making in my plant routine and my home to help my plants survive another season. My number one tip, and this is probably everyone's number one tip when it comes to this topic, is to cut back on watering. You will hear that over and over and over again if you start to look into this topic. It's really important because the price is root rot, aka a pretty much dead plant. Basically, once fall rolls around and winter comes, growing season starts to wind down, and your houseplants are a little bit complex because they are inside, so they don't sense seasons as clearly as we think that they do. They are still sitting in comfortable house temperatures. The biggest indicators to the fact that the seasons are changing are honestly the daylight hours, so it's getting a lot less sunlight and it might get a little bit colder for them depending on your house and your insulation and all of that stuff. It's not super dramatic for the plants, but that is why plants do feel a little bit of seasonal changes, and with that comes less growth. They are not as active and there's less sun. So because of both of those things, your plants are going to go through a lot less water. So you will notice that you are going to need to start watering your plants a lot less. If you use something like a moisture meter, you're probably going to see that your watering is going to get cut back in like maybe half. I would say that's at the point that I am at right now. In the same vein, tip number 2 is to also cut back on fertilizing. I do say this with a little bit of hesitancy because you don't have to cut all fertilizing out for the fall and winter. I actually think that's kind of a myth. If you were using something as gentle as liquider, which is technically considered a plant food, or you're using worm castings, you can do that year round because it is so gentle. If you are using something a little bit stronger than that, then I would say to use a little bit more judgment there. For beginners, I would actually recommend kind of pulling all the way back on fertilizing just so you don't accidentally over fertilize anything. It's all a learning process, you'll get there. For some of my more intermediate advanced houseplant owners, basically I don't recommend just saying I'm done fertilizing today. I would look at your plants and see how they're doing. If they are slowing down in growth, then it is perfectly fine and I advise you to pull back on the fertilizing. But if your houseplants aren't done growing yet and they aren't really sensing the seasonal shift, then you can continue going on as per usual. If they still want the same amount of water, you can go ahead and give them the same amount of water. And if they are still growing, you can continue to fertilize. It's really up to your discretion and the amount of attention you want to give your houseplants. When I'm sitting close to 100 houseplants, and I know a lot of you have more, it might be harder to kind of make 2 batches of water and keep track of who's getting fertilized when. If I was fertilizing with something stronger than liquider, I would probably pull the plug on fertilizing for all my plants at the same time. If you're using something gentle, don't be shy to go year round with it. And if you are using something stronger, I definitely recommend actually taking a closer look at your plants and seeing what they need. My next tip is to keep tabs on humidity and temperature because with the seasons come a few different changes in our house. The windows, for example, are going to let a lot more cold drafts in, and there's going to be cold air kind of coming off of the windows. There is going to be, if you have heat, there's going to be a lot more dry air getting blown around, and none of that is ideal for your plants. I do recommend, if you want to get a little crazy, you can get these little Therm Pro, it's like a thermometer and it'll tell you how high your humidity is. Right now I'm sitting at 70 degrees Fahrenheit and 51% humidity, which is okay. That's, you know, pretty typical, I'd say. I would ideally like to see this room at like 73, and I don't know, with this humidifier, I would like to see it at like 65% humidity, but we can dream. I find this really helpful because I noticed that this room gets a lot colder at night than I thought it did. So I would come in the morning and see that this thermometer has dropped down to like 65, 64 degrees Fahrenheit, which is way too cold for most of my plants in here. I do have some adaptable ones, but not all. And on top of that, I do like to see what the humidity is reading so I know when to turn this on. I probably wouldn't have noticed if it wasn't for this little ThermPro thing. So I do recommend picking one up if you have the extra money. On top of that, I also did invest in thermal curtains. I would say that they're actually doing a pretty decent job. I mean, they're not perfect. They do kind of block out some of that cold air coming off of my giant porch window over here. When I come into the room in the morning, the thermometer has been at a higher temperature, which is amazing. I open them for the day to let the sunlight come in, and then once the sun sets, I close them to keep the cold air out. So those are a few changes that I've done in that regard. And I also, as I said, recommend getting a humidifier. Oh, also last tip in this little section is going along with your windows potentially being really like cold zones in your house. If your plants are starting to react negatively to being so close to the window, I know that everyone wants to squeeze out all that natural sunlight and shove all their plants in the windowsills, but it might be too cold in there for some plants. So just make sure that they aren't getting any cold damage, and you might want to swap out the plants that are sitting in the windowsill once in a while. That's it. That's my last tip for temperature and humidity. Tip number 4, I'm gonna kind of breeze through this, is grow lights. It's a miracle, but actually in my house right now, I'm not using one grow light. I know, it might change, but people like to use grow lights because obviously with the winter comes a lot less natural light and less daylight hours. Our houseplants aren't adjusted to that, so a lot of people use supplemental light, which comes in the form of grow lights, to kind of like, you know, help out our plants a little bit. It is I would say it's almost a necessity for some houses, but I am very lucky in this place where I do get a lot of natural daylight regardless. It's just kind of for a shorter amount of time, but I do have a ton of grow lights from my last apartment. Those grow lights are linked in my Amazon storefront in my description box if you want to see what I've used in the past. I'm not crazy knowledgeable on all of the technicalities of grow lights, so I'm not gonna get super deep into it, but I did just want to throw it out there that if you really struggle with light, even during the summer, then for the winter / fall, you're probably gonna want to invest in a few grow lights, and they come in all different kind of like shapes, sizes, forms, strengths, whatever. So I'm sure that you can find something for your budget, for your setup, all of that good stuff. All right, and the last tip is kind of a funny tip, but I think it gets overlooked a lot in these lists, and that is to keep things clean, which is so hard because in the fall and winter, I lose all motivation for everything, but it is really important to keep your plants and your plant spaces clean during the fall and winter times. I say that because with the fall and winter, unfortunately, does come some dying foliage, so just make sure that you're looking around and picking off any dead leaves. You don't want that to sit there and attract pests and all that. On top of that, you really want to minimize anything that could obstruct like sunlight to plant. I would wipe down your leaves so to make sure there's no dust covering them, which I need to do. And then also wipe down your windows so that there's no filth kind of blocking out sunlight that way. That's another reason I like to keep things clean. And then lastly, I do also like to keep all of my plant shelves clean, because if you keep them dirty, if you have debris laying around, it's gonna attract pests, and of course you don't want a pest outbreak during the winter because your plants are already a bit vulnerable during that time. I do have a video on my DIY leaf cleaner if you want to check that out for more information on how I do it. I still use the same leaf cleaner and I love it. I will plug it. It is a little bit of an older video. Other than that, just keep things tidy, which is always easier said than done, I know. But okay, there you have it. Those are all of my tips and things that I'm doing to prepare for the fall / winter. I have actually like a winter survival playlist where I have a bunch of videos from last winter talking about similar stuff if you want to check that out. Please subscribe to my channel if you aren't already and you want to see more planty content from me. I will help you and your plants survive the winter time, believe it or not. And if you want to become a member and get access to my member only Discord server, you can do that, and we will have a winter support group probably forming in there. Please like this video if you liked it, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff, and I will see you in my next video. Bye! Huge thank you to all of my members. Thank you to O'Neill, Val, Katrina, Audrey, Louie, Heather, _B, Jacqueline, Linda, Michaela, Brooke, Daniel, Vanessa, and Michelle. Thank you all so much for supporting my channel, and I'll see you in my next video.